So this is the review for the final. This is a quick overview of what you are expected to know and be able to do for this final in Algebra 2, 2016. So the first part of this final is going to start off with exponents and logs. So you need to remember how to graph exponents. So you always start with the base, that's my b. I'll simplify it down to 3 points, -1, 0, and 1. With that b, I know it's going to be 0, 1, 1, 3, and -1, 1/3. This 2 outside multiplies the y's. So I'm going to multiply each one of these by 2. 2/3, 2, and 6. My asymptote did not move, so it's still on the x-axis. I then plot -1, 2/3, 0, 2, and 1, 6. My graph is going to look like this. For this one, for number 2, my b is roughly the same, except for it's 4. Now I'm going to take this and move down 2. So what I do is I plot my first points, and then I move them down 2. With that, my asymptote moves to that k. So my graph looks like this. And with this one, with the +5, it's left 5. So I always start off with my base. And now all I'm going to do is move these left 5. My asymptote does not change because my k value is still 0. It would be the same process for each one of these. The only problem is now there's multiple movements. Number 4 has the dk with it, so it's the 1/2. So all that does is it changes my graph. It flips where that fraction is. But I just follow the same procedure where I multiply by the outside number. So I have 10, 5, and 5/2, which is really 2.5, okay, secretly. I then can plot that. 0, 5, I can definitely plot. 1 and 2.5, I can plot. And -1, 10 is like way up here, okay? And then all I do is I move it down 8, which means my asymptote is down 8, so that's down here at -8. And this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this one's going to end up being at 3. And then it's going to look like that. These next two are the same process. You're then just going to graph, check the answers that are also in this email, and you'll see how those graphs end up. For log functions, the only thing that changes is now that -1, 0, and 1 is on the y's, the base is 6. So I'm going to write 1/6, 1, and 6. So I plot it normally. 1/6 is a fraction, so I'm going to go fraction way left, down 1, 1, 0, and 6, 1. My asymptote is vertical now. Okay, and now I move right and down. When I move right 1, my asymptote moves. Okay, it's controlled by the number inside the parentheses now. And then down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my new points are going to look right 1, down 5. Oh, right here. It's going to look like this. Okay. Same process with just the 5. My starting points again. -1, 0, 1. And now I'm going to move right and up. So I'm going to move right 1 and then up 3. Right 1, up 3. Right 1, up 3. My asymptote is going to be right 1, and it's going to look like that. So it's the same process for each one of these graphs. Again, check the answers, and you'll be able to know if you are graphing these correctly. To tell with which is a growth and decay, you always look at your B. So this is a growth because it is above 1, while this is a decay because it's a fraction. Okay? You do not care about any of these numbers in here. You only care about what number is being raised to the power. If it's above 1, it's a growth. If it's below 1, it's a decay. In this case, it's a plus, so it's going to be a growth, and this is a minus, and it's going to be a decay. That is the only thing you guys need to know about that. You do not look at the numbers outside the parentheses. For these, you are actually just plugging in, okay? So in this, I give you an equation. This 720,500 is your starting value. And the 1 point is your growth factor. The 0.022 is your rate, which, if translated into a percentage, is 2.2% growth. Okay? So this was since 1980. And part B says 2000. So my X is going to be 20. So all I do is plug this in. And I can plug it into a calculator and solve. For the next one, okay, for the next one, for C, it asks me when it will be 1 million. So that becomes what Y equals. First step in solving this is I divide. We have 1.3879 equals 1.022 to the raise to the x. To bring the x down, I would then have to write it as the log of 1.3279 divided by the log of 1.022, and that would get my answer. So you just have to remember when you're doing this that you have to close the parentheses after this 9. And then you get that it will take 12.88 years. That's how you would find that answer. For the next problems, okay, this is where you're plugging in the numbers. So in this case, this is my start, and this is my rate. Okay, so I would say y equals 800, 1 plus 0.05, and I don't know my time, so that's my x, or 800 times 1.05 raised to the x. How many beetles will be there in 8 months? Again, all I do is plug that in. When you plug that in, make sure you hit the caret button. It is not 1.05 times 8, is 1.05 raised to the 8th, and you get 1189.96, so roughly 1,182 beetles. So continuing this again, many of these problems are just plugging in. The depreciation, remember, has the minus, so it's the y equals the 1500 1 minus 0.18 raised to the t. So in this case, it would be 1500 0.82 raised to the x. Okay, so for d here, 1500 0.82 raised to the 6th. Is $456. Okay. And then this would okay. And you solve. In this case, you should get an error because technically it will never get to 0. Your computer is worth something at some point. In this case, you hear the word compounded. Compounded means that there's an n, so it's going to be y equals 100,000, 1 plus your rate, written as a decimal, over quarterly, which means n is 4, raised to the 4t. And then how much will be left after 10 years? That is t equals 10, and you solve. So I just multiply the 4 times the 10. The trick with this one is you take the decimal, divide by 4 first, and then add 1. And now you can calculate it all out in your you should get $110,613.58. The rest of these problems are much the same. You just have to decide on what equation you are using and then solve those. Part 2 of, again, check your answer sheets for this and to figure out if you're doing this right. Part 2 is the previous units that we will be doing. The previous units just require you to remember certain things. So for this one, all you are doing when it says p is -3 is you are just plugging it in. So every time you see an x, every time you see an x, you put in a -3. You calculate it out. It should come out to be -2,367. For the next one, you plug in just the 5, okay? For simplifying, you just have to look if you're adding or subtracting. When you're adding, all you're doing is combining like terms. So in this case, you should get 10x squared minus 9x plus 15. Again, you're just combining like terms. And if it's plus, you add them. If it's minus, you subtract them. So in this case, it's -10x minus 17x squared. So it's -27x squared. -2x minus 19x is -21x. And 20 minus -6 is a positive 26, because this minus and this minus become pluses. For number 4, you're distributing. So what you do is you multiply the numbers, so -12, you multiply the x's, so there's 2 x's, so it's x squared, and then the y's, y to the 4th. Remember, you just keep adding exponents. In this case, it becomes plus 18, because 2 negatives, x squared, y squared, and minus 14x. There's no x to multiply, so you just leave a y to the 3rd. For the next one, you have to multiply twice. So you have to multiply the -5k times everything. So you should get 20k to the 3rd minus 15k squared plus 40k. Then you multiply the 3 times everything, which is -12k squared plus 9k minus 24. You then combine your like terms. So there's no other k to the 3rds. There are k squared, so it's minus 27k squared. You combine the k's plus 49k, and then there's no other number, just a plain number, so minus 24. And that is your answer. For division, there are 2 possibilities. For this one, in long division, you do x minus 2 dividing 8x squared minus 17x plus 2. You look at what do I multiply this x by to get 8? Well, 8, and then I need another x because there's only 1 here and there's 2 there. So 8x times x is 8x squared. 8x times -2 is -16x. I then change the signs and I combine them, so it's -1x, and I bring down the positive 2. So now I look at how do I make this x, this -1. I need to multiply by -1. So I multiply both of these by -1. I then change the signs. Combine them, I get 0. It means no remainder. No remainder. Which means this is my answer. For synthetic division, it sometimes is a little bit quicker. I put the opposite of this number in the hook. And then I do 4, -71, 306, -360. I draw a line down here. I carry down the 4. I do 12 times 4, which is 48. I then add these. I get -23. I do 12 times negative 3, I get negative 276. I add those, I get 30. 12 times 30 is 360. I add those, I get 0. So my answer to this is 4x squared minus 23x plus 30. That is my final answer. I drop one of the powers. It was 3. I make it a 2. For these next two, you have to answer a series of questions. I'm going to do number 9. It's a little bit easier to explain. For A, for the end behavior, I write as x goes to positive infinity, as x goes this way, what's happening to y? Y increases. X goes to negative infinity, y also increases. If they are the same, that means it's an even function. The number of real zeros is how many times does it cross? So it crosses 4 times. So for C, it crosses at negative 2, negative 1, 0, and 2. So, and for D, it crosses at each one of these. It doesn't bounce. So they cross it all. Crosses through all roots. Okay? And then on the exam, you're going to be asked to write the equation. And the equation is really easy if you have this answer C, because all you do is you change the signs. So you put in parentheses, so you do x, instead of minus 2, you put plus 2. Instead of minus 1, you put plus 1. Instead of 0, you just put x. And for 2, you just put minus 2. And that is the equation of your line. That's your equation. For these next ones, I'll talk you through 10. 10, you're left with a quadratic. Quadratic, so the first step is opposite b over 2a. Opposite b over 2a, so you would be 2 over 2 times negative 2, which is 2 over negative 4, which is negative 1/2. Then you create a table with that negative 1/2. And you can choose a number above it, 0, and a number below it, negative 1. These become your x values. Then you plug these values into the equation. So negative 2 times negative 1/2 squared minus 2 times negative 1/2 plus 2. You would then use your calculator, plug that in. You should get 2.5. When I plug in my negative 1, I should get 2. And when I plug in 0, I get 2. Using those 3 points, this is my vertex. So negative 1/2, 2.5 is right here. 0, 2, negative 1, 2. I can kind of sketch out a quick graph there. For this one, again, opposite b over 2a. Then make your table. Check your answers and make sure that you are doing these correctly. These next ones are in vertex form. Vertex form is the left, right, up, down movement. So you have to start with your starting values. And this negative outside multiplies. So I'm going to multiply all these by negative 1. So negative 4, negative 1, 0, negative 1, negative 4. I then plot those. So negative 2, negative 4, negative 1, negative 1, 0, 0. Okay? And then I follow the same rules. Right and down. So when I move them right and down, right 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down 3, right, down 3, I get a graph that looks like this. And that is my final answer for that. Check your answer for 13. Factoring trinomials, you're going to have to solve. Remember, all you're doing is trying to get it into this form, so then you can say 4y plus 8 equals 0, 3y minus 2 equals 0. So this becomes y equals negative 2, this becomes y equals 2/3 when I solve it. I'm going to skip 15. I'm just going to add a 1 there. 15 is a little bit easier than 16. For 16 to solve these, because it's a quadratic, I have to do a times c, which in this case is 12 times 4, which is 48. I then break down the 48 into what multiplies to 48. 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and 16, 4 and 12, 6 and 8. Oh, I'm trying to get this negative 14, so if I make them both negative, that's going to be negative 14. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, I'm going to say 12x squared minus 6x minus 8x plus 4 equals 0. Factor by grouping. I can take out 6x here. What's left is a 2x minus 1. I can take out 4 here, a negative 4 here, and I'm left with 2x minus 1 here. I now know that those purple parentheses here are the same, so I combine it into 2x minus 1, and my oranges are the same, 6x minus 4, and now I can solve by saying 2x minus 1 equals 0, so x has to be 1/2, and 6x minus 4 equals 0, so x is going to end up being 2/3 in this case. So that's how you would solve quadratic functions. For these next ones, you're kind of following the same procedure. In this case, you start with $1.50. On average, you're doing 50 people per hour. 25% increase, and you lose 5 people per hour. So you have to actually create 2 equations, or 2 parentheses. So you start with $1.50, but now I'm increasing it 25 cents every time. But based on that, I start with 50 people, and then I subtract every time I change it. After I distribute everything through, what I end up with is an equation that looks like 75 plus 5x minus 1.25x squared, which this is my A, B, and C. It's just written backwards. So if I'm finding the cost, so I have to do the opposite of B over 2A, which I'm going to end up doing in here too. So negative 5 divided by 2 times negative 1.25, which is negative 5 divided by negative 2.5, which is 2, which means I'm going to change the price twice. So if I change the price twice, that's 1.50 plus 0.25 times 2, which is $2. What's the maximum income? I take this x and I plug it into my equation. So 75 plus 5 times 2 minus 1.25 times 2 squared. I should come out with $80. And that is my maximum income. I would do the same process for 18, but I already gave the equation. For solving systems of equations, this is the last part. solve by graphing. First off, y equals mx plus b. You got to get into that form. If it's not in that form, you got to solve for y. You graph it, so plus 2, and then down 2 over 1. That's my purple line. In this case, I start at -5, and I go up 5 over 1. The solution to this is that point, which is 1, 0. That is my point. For my next one, you have a couple options. Okay, solve the system. So if I use elimination, you see how it's plus 4 and minus 4? Just add these two equations together. I get 4x equals -8. I divide by 4. X is -2. So now I know one of my points. So now I take that -2 and I plug it in. So I'm going to do 3 times -2 plus 4y equals -10. -6 plus 4y equals -10. Add 6. 4y equals -4. Y equals -1. Now I have my point. I could also do substitution, where I solve for a variable. So if I have x plus 3y equals -3, if I just subtract this 3y, I have x equals -3 minus 3y. I then take this and I plug it in here. So it becomes 4 times -3 minus 3y plus 3y equals 6. -12 minus 12y plus 3y equals 6. -12 minus 9y equals 6. Now I'm solving, so I'm going to add 12 on both sides. So I got -9y equals 18. So y is going to be -2. I can then plug that in here. So x equals -3 minus 3 times -2. -3 plus 6, which is 3. So my point for this one is 3, -2. So that's all the topics that are on the final. Check the answers to the final, review, and come in with any questions. Thank you.